My name is Susan, and it's been 10 years since my family erased me from their lives as if I had never existed. No phone call, no birthday card, not even a check-in on Thanksgiving. They didn't need to say goodbye. They just made me invisible. I remember the day everything changed so clearly. I was 17, just starting my senior year of high school. My mother, Eleanor, owned a gold necklace with a pearl pendant, a family heirloom she only wore on special occasions. One Sunday morning, the necklace suddenly disappeared from her jewelry box. I hadn't gone into her room that day. I'd been in the kitchen all morning helping Uncle James, the only person in the family who had ever been kind to me, make breakfast. But that didn't matter. The moment Eleanor realized the necklace was gone, she turned to me with a chilling look of suspicion. "You were the only one home," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to make my chest tighten. "And you've always had a habit of poking around things that don't belong to you." Before I could respond, Amanda, my older sister, came down the stairs, arms crossed on the railing, a smug sparkle in her eyes. "I saw Susan in Mom's room this morning," Amanda said, her face unreadable. Maybe it was an accident. An accident? I hadn't stepped foot in Mom's room all week. "I went in there to unplug the hairdryer Amanda left on," I said, trying to stay calm. "You always told me to double-check that kind of thing before leaving the house." But my mother didn't listen. She didn't need proof. She only needed an excuse to confirm what she'd always believed about me. That I was a mistake. From that day on, I was no longer invited to family dinners. They said I should feel ashamed and keep my distance. My father, Harold, didn't say a word in my defense. He only spoke once during dinner that night, just as I was leaving the kitchen. "Everything good disappears when you're around." I slept alone in the basement, ate separately, and was gradually excluded from every family activity. No one talked to me, except Uncle James, and only when no one else was nearby. I wasn't yelled at. I wasn't hit. But the silence, day after day, it was worse than anything. I thought things would change when I got into college. I was accepted to the University of Vermont. Not an Ivy League school, but enough to give me hope for a fresh start. But one day, while I was in my dorm, my roommate Sophie shoved her phone screen in front of my face. Her eyes filled with confusion. "Have you seen this?" On the screen was an anonymous blog post titled, "The Truth About Susan Walker, the girl who knows how to manipulate everything." It was full of baseless accusations, that I faked illnesses for better grades, that I stole from friends, and of course, that I secretly took my mother's jewelry. There was no author name, but the language was disturbingly familiar. I knew instantly. It was Amanda. I tried contacting school administrators, hoping to prove the post was slander, but no one listened. "First impressions matter," one professor told me after class, "and you might want to reconsider how you present yourself." That blog post cost me my scholarship for the next semester. A scholarship I had spent 6 months earning through field research on community psychology. My classmates kept their distance. Some professors started calling my name with a cautious tone. I nearly dropped out, but I didn't. I gritted my teeth and pushed through. I worked 3 part-time jobs every week. I lived on instant noodles and powdered coffee. I studied in the library until the lights went out. I'm not sure why I kept going. Maybe a part of me still believed that if I became good enough, successful enough, my mother would call. She'd say it was all a misunderstanding, that she was wrong. But that call never came, and I stopped waiting. I graduated college at 22, with a decent GPA, no scholarships, no honors, and not a single congratulatory message from my family. I thought I had left it all behind, the past, the pain, and Amanda. But I was wrong. 3 years later, while working at a community mental health center in Providence, I got an email from a colleague. "Susan, have you seen this article? Some parts sound just like the paper you mentioned when you first joined." I opened the attachment. It was a published study in Wellness Frontiers, titled Self-Recovery Behaviors in Psychologically Traumatized Youth. Author, Amanda Walker. I read every line, and my heart sank. The structure, the citations, the data approach, even the conclusion. It was all my work. I had spent 8 months writing it in the evenings after work. Amanda couldn't have known those details, unless she had the original file. Then I remembered. A year earlier, Amanda had visited my office. She said she was thinking about switching to a career in mental health and wanted to learn from my experience. I had naively opened my laptop and shared everything, my ongoing topics, community surveys, even unpublished data charts. I thought maybe Amanda was finally trying to reconnect. I even made her coffee. And once again, I let myself be betrayed. I immediately contacted the journal, demanding they verify the source of the article. But 3 weeks passed with no reply. When I called, the receptionist said flatly, "We are not obligated to disclose our editorial process. If you believe there is a dispute, please pursue it through legal channels." I didn't have a legal team. I didn't have money to hire investigators. But I had my memory. And this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. I began gathering everything: drafts, emails sent to Amanda, even an audio clip from our meeting. It wasn't long, but enough to prove she had access to my material before the article was published. I printed out every piece of evidence, labeled each folder. But while going through everything, I found something far more serious. In an old bank account I'd opened in college, I saw a series of strange transfers labeled medical consulting, research collaboration fees, specialist support, over $18,000 total, recorded over 2 years, during a time I was barely surviving on instant noodles and paying tuition in small installments. The recipient name, Susan E. Walker. My name, but I had never received a cent of it. I sent the information to an old friend, Nathan, who now works as a forensic accountant. A few days later, he called me back, sounding tense. "Sue, you might be facing a tax investigation. These transactions are linked to an entity called the Walker Mental Wellness Foundation. But I couldn't find any valid operating license. It's likely a financial front. And worse, they used your tax ID number." I froze. "Who registered the account?" "Not sure yet, but one of the coordinators listed is Eleanor Walker." My mother's name. I wanted to deny it, to believe maybe it was a mistake. But deep down, I knew. She never stopped. My mother once told me, "There's no place in this family for someone who tarnishes our image." Now, I understand. To her, I wasn't a daughter. I was a threat to control. I reopened the old medical records file. Before my grandfather passed away when I was 15, he'd told me he had set aside part of an education fund just for me, because Susan is the only one who lives true to her heart. I never received a cent from that fund. Now I know why. I went through all my old emails, called the law office that once worked with my family. One of the former legal assistants, now retired, agreed to send me a copy of the revised will from 2014. My name had been crossed out, the reason written next to it, no verified blood relation. I started shaking, not out of anger, out of fear. Because I knew she had faked a DNA test, and she used that result to erase me from every legal record of the family. But they forgot one thing. I'm no longer the 17-year-old girl who got silently cast out of her own home. I got the wedding invitation on an April afternoon, just as I was preparing to submit a package of evidence to Nathan's law office. Cream envelope, thick paper, gold trim, and my name, Susan E. Walker, written in a handwriting I could never forget. My mother's. Eleanor. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it sitting on my kitchen counter like a foreign object, something both distant and haunting. 10 years. 10 years of no calls, no check-ins. And now? A wedding invite? I pulled the card from the envelope, my hands going cold like the blood was draining from them. Embossed in glittering print, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Amanda Walker and Zachary L. Morrison, June 18th at Carlton House, Newport. Zachary Morrison." It hit me immediately. 7 years ago, I had attended a social impact startup summit. I was there trying to raise seed money for my first public health initiative. One of the judges that day was Zachary. He was the young CFO of a private health investment fund. Smug, polished, textbook arrogance. When I finished my pitch, he smiled faintly and said to the entire room, "Interesting concept, but maybe learn more about finance before stepping into the real arena." I stood frozen on stage, my face burning, heart sinking. That was the last time I ever pitched as a founder. After that, I shifted to consulting behind the scenes. And now, the man who publicly humiliated me was about to marry my sister. At first, I thought it was a joke, but no, the invite was printed with real ink, a real date, a real venue. Carlton House isn't a place for pranks. It's a historic oceanfront hotel known for high society New England weddings, the kind you see in luxury documentaries about the American dream. I set the invitation back on the table and sat down, my head spinning. This wasn't random. Amanda knew I had met Zachary. So did my mother. They knew the history, the pain, and they still sent it. No note. No, we'd love to see you. No, we hope you'll forgive us. Just a cold invitation that felt more like a command. At first, I thought about tearing it in half, but then another thought crept in. Part of me wanted to understand why. Another part, the coldest part, realized they didn't want me there to reconcile. They wanted me there to witness, to be a silent bystander, a shadow in the back row, a reminder that I would always be the outsider. They forgot one thing: I'm not the same Susan anymore. That night, I called Nathan. "Are you busy on June 18th? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on?" "I'm going to a wedding, and I might need someone to sit next to me so I don't throw a glass of wine in someone's face." He laughed, then went quiet. "Are you sure?" "I'm not going to offer congratulations," I said. "I'm going to look them in the eye and let them see I'm still standing." After the call, I opened my closet and took out the navy blue dress I'd never worn. Fitted, deep V-neck, open back, elegant enough to avoid criticism, sharp enough to turn heads. I didn't need their approval. I needed them to see that I survived, and that I wasn't afraid of anything anymore. My body was exhausted from a long day, but my mind was spinning like a rewound film reel. The closer the wedding came, the more I realized this wasn't just an invitation. Amanda never did anything by accident. Every move she made was a chess piece she believed would win her the game. I got out of bed around 2 a.m., made a cup of ginger tea, and opened my laptop. The cold blue screen lit up the dark. I opened the Walker Archive folder, a file I had created 3 years ago, then abandoned out of sheer exhaustion from fighting the past. I slowly scrolled through, opening one file at a time. Fragments of old emails, original research drafts, photos I'd saved from events Amanda attended. It was all still there, scattered like puzzle pieces that never formed a picture. This time was different. This time, I wasn't searching for fairness. I wanted the truth, and I was ready to turn over every stone to find what was buried beneath. I started with the plagiarized research paper. I found the original document I had emailed Amanda with the file attached, date, and time-stamped. A week later, she replied with the subject line, "Wow, you really should publish this." I saved that exchange, then dug into Amanda's academic records. I accessed the database from our old university, where she'd supposedly completed her master's in applied psychology. To my surprise, there was no thesis under her name in the digital archives. Her name didn't appear on the list of students who'd defended their final thesis that year. I took a screenshot. My blood went cold. Next, I went to an anonymous blog I had discovered during my freshman year, a site that spread nasty rumors about female students. There was a series of posts focused on me. Back then, I suspected Amanda, but couldn't prove it. This time, I was more careful. I asked Nathan to help trace the IP address from the blog's hosting server. One of his software engineer friends tracked it to a device that had logged in from the offices of the Walker Foundation, where Amanda once served as program director. I saved the technical confirmation, another link in the chain. But what truly chilled me was what I found when I began reviewing the Walker Foundation's financial activity. With access Nathan obtained from public records, we traced several suspicious payments, listed to anonymous consultants. The recipient's name, Susan Walker. The problem was, during that time, I was working part-time at a small counseling center and had no knowledge of any of it. The total came to over $60,000 in 4 years. I sat motionless for a long time. They had used my name to hide shady transactions. They created a fake persona of me as some phantom contributor while I was scraping by month to month. I could barely breathe as I opened the next file. A leaked medical report, source unknown, but complete with the logo and stamp of Harbor Wellness Clinic, where Amanda had interned during her final year of graduate school. The report described a failed treatment that led to a 7-year-old boy being hospitalized due to a prescription error. The attending clinician listed? A. Walker. At the bottom of the internal investigation summary, the final line made my skin crawl. Insufficient evidence of professional misconduct. Case closed per executive order from Director Eleanor Walker. My mother. Again, my mother. I quietly closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. The truth was undeniable now. Amanda hadn't just stolen my work. She had built an entire career on borrowed reputation, forged records, and the protection of my powerful mother. They thought I'd stay silent forever, that I'd never come back, never be strong enough to confront it. They were wrong. I opened the drawer and pulled out a yellow file envelope. On the front I wrote in bold, steady pen, "For those who need to know the truth." This wasn't personal anymore. This was the truth. Even if it brought the whole house of cards crashing down. The afternoon of June 18th, Newport was glowing with sun. Carlton House stood against the deep blue sky like a perfectly staged play. White silk curtains fluttering in the breeze, violins echoing from the garden, guests in formal wear swirling like waves. They came to witness a dream wedding of the elite, and had no idea they were about to see the truth unravel. I stepped out of the car, my heels tapping softly on the marble walkway. I wore the navy blue dress with the side slit, open back, modest neckline. Not flashy, but impossible to ignore. The first pair of eyes to catch me belonged to the lobby manager. She hesitated slightly, then nodded. I wasn't an uninvited guest. I had RSVP'd. They couldn't stop me. Walking through the grand entrance, everything was staged like a showcase. White orchids draped over marble columns, crystal chandeliers sparkling, chairs arranged in a crescent around an altar of silk and scented candles. Amanda stood in the distance, near the stage, in a fitted mermaid gown, her blonde curls perfectly styled. Next to her was Zachary, still polished, still cold, just like I remembered. When I entered, the room didn't exactly fall silent, but the air shifted. Fleeting glances, a few murmurs, and then... Eleanor's eyes met mine. There was a flicker in her gaze, lips pressed tight, but she said nothing. Still the same. Always performing when she knew she had an audience. The ceremony moved quickly. No one objected, no one interrupted. But I hadn't come to say I object. I came to reveal. The reception followed in the back garden. Soft jazz from the live band, champagne flutes passed around, laughter rippling through light conversation. I waited. I waited for the moment they raised their glasses to toast the bride and groom in thunderous applause. I stepped up to the podium just as the MC stepped down. No one stopped me. I took the mic, scanning the crowd. "Excuse me," I said, loud enough to be heard. "I have a few words. About family, about reputation, and about the truth." The garden froze. Amanda stood stiff. Zachary frowned, stepping back. I'm Susan Walker, the bride's sister. Some of you may not have heard of me, and that's exactly why I'm here today. I pulled a folder from my bag and held it up. This is the original research paper Amanda submitted to receive the 2016 Public Health Fellowship. But I wrote it. I have the original file, edit notes, and the email where she asked to take a look at the draft. I didn't need to shout. I just let each word drop like a stone in the still air. This is a copy of the university academic records, showing Amanda never submitted a graduate thesis. She doesn't have a valid degree. Amanda stepped forward, her face pale, forcing a strained smile. Sweetheart, maybe we can talk about this later. I'm not done, I said, my voice low but sharp as steel. I turned to Zachary. Do you remember 2017, the summit in Boston? I was the presenter. You laughed at me for being out of my depth. And now, you're marrying someone who built her reputation by copying and faking her way through everything. He stood frozen. Then I looked straight at Eleanor. And you? Eleanor Walker. You thought I didn't know about the 2014 DNA test? I found the fake clinic you used to erase me from the family will. But that didn't make me disappear. You forgot. Documents can be forged, but the truth can't. The glass shattered somewhere to the right. Zachary turned to Amanda, his face tightening. Is what she's saying true? His voice cracked. Amanda said nothing, her lips pressed into a thin line. Eleanor stepped forward, about to speak, but I held up my hand. I didn't come here to argue. I came to put the truth back where it belongs. I set the mic down on the table and turned to leave. Behind me, the whispers rose like a wave. I didn't need to stay to see Zachary pull his hand away from Amanda, or Eleanor recoil like someone had thrown cold water on her. I didn't need to watch the carefully crafted image they spent their lives building start to crumble. I only needed one thing, release, and I got it. In a way none of them ever expected. Outside, the ocean breeze swept through my hair. I walked toward the sound of distant waves, shoulders back, steps steady, and never looked behind me. For the first time in years, I was free. 2 days after the wedding, life seemed to settle back into its usual rhythm. But I knew the storm was just beginning. That morning, I sat in my small apartment, sunlight pouring through the window, a half-finished cup of coffee beside me and my laptop open. I took a deep breath, then hit send. The first email went to 3 prominent health and education blogs, Health Watch Now, Scholarscope, and the Academic Mirror. Attached were copies of my original research, email exchanges with Amanda, documentation of the plagiarism, incomplete academic records, and the patient file from the prescription error at Harbor Wellness Clinic. I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. The truth spoke for itself. The second email went to the National Office of Academic Review, the agency overseeing federal degrees and scholarships. The third, I sent to the Rhode Island State Office of Medical Licensing, responsible for issuing professional credentials for both Amanda and my mother, Eleanor. With each click of send, I felt another weight lift from my chest. I knew I was cracking the glossy finish my family had spent decades polishing. But I didn't regret it, because that shine was built on pretense, deceit, and the scars they left on me. 3 days later, the leak began. On Tuesday evening, Health Watch Now published an article titled, Plagiarism Concerns Emerge in Scholarship File of Newport Charity Executive. Though the name wasn't explicitly mentioned, a blurry photo from a spring gala 2 years ago was enough for anyone in the industry to connect the dots. The next morning, the Academic Mirror ran a more detailed report. Brookdale University alum may have earned federal grant with plagiarized work. Amanda's profile vanished from the Walker Foundation website. I checked her LinkedIn, completely wiped. No degrees, no awards, just vague filler descriptions. By Friday, the Walker Foundation homepage displayed an urgent notice. Operations temporarily suspended for internal financial review. I laughed. They called it an internal review? I called it a full-scale collapse. Nathan texted me that afternoon. The financial report you provided was enough to open a federal investigation. You're about to see things move. And sure enough, by Monday morning, my mother's name, Eleanor Walker, appeared on the preliminary investigation list by the Federal Audit Office for charitable fund mismanagement tied to fraudulent identity use. But it didn't stop there. While reviewing transactions connected to the Walker Foundation, investigators discovered an account under the name Susan E. Walker had been used to legitimize expenses for fake conferences that never actually took place. They had used my name to build the perfect cover, and now, that same name was pulling them into the light. A week later, my mother's medical license was temporarily suspended. Pending investigation, she was barred from overseeing any medical or nonprofit organization. Amanda remained silent, but according to a reporter friend of Nathan's, her academic file was now under review by the university. I didn't feel triumphant. There were no applause, no dramatic final scenes, just silence. The heavy kind that comes when a castle starts crumbling from its foundation. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. "You've gone too far. What do you think you're doing?" I didn't reply. I took a screenshot and sent it straight to Nathan. He wrote back, "The more pressure you get, the closer you are to the truth." A week later, the Newport Herald released a special investigative piece. From prestige to scandal, major state charity under fire for academic and financial misconduct. The article named not just Amanda and Eleanor, but also a third figure, Jonathan Granger, the foundation's deputy CFO and Eleanor's ex-husband, my stepfather. I wasn't surprised. Jonathan had long been the man behind the numbers, never seen in public, but the one with signature authority. And now, he was the first to be formally asked to step down from all roles pending investigation. The house they built on glitter, names, money, and my silenced voice was now collapsing layer by layer. I didn't need to stand there and watch it all fall. I just sat in my small apartment, sipped my tea, and held the paper I wrote when I was 21. My first study, the one that was stolen, now finally acknowledged. And I knew. Justice doesn't always come fast, but it always arrives on time. I was watering my balcony plants when I heard a knock, not rushed, but firm. I looked through the peephole. It was my mother. Eleanor Walker stood there, shoulders squared, gray wool coat, face perfectly made up like she'd just walked out of a boardroom, even though that reputation now lay in ruins. I opened the door. She didn't speak right away. Just looked at me with the same eyes that had once made me feel small 1,000 times as a child. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. Though I already knew, this wasn't a visit for reconciliation. She stepped in, her eyes scanning the apartment. Not to admire, to judge. "Still simple as ever," she commented, flatly, with no effort to hide the implication. I said nothing. I pulled out a chair for her. She didn't sit. "You've done enough, Susan," she began, voice eerily calm. "You've turned this entire family into a public joke. Do you think this is right?" I set the watering can down, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and looked her in the eye. "I didn't do anything, Mom. I just stopped staying silent." Her eyes flickered. For the first time during the visit, I saw real hesitation. "You know Amanda isn't perfect. But you didn't have to destroy everything just because you were jealous," she went on, her tone sharpening. "You always needed everything to revolve around you. And when it didn't, you attacked." I laughed, softly but uncontrollably. "No, Mom. I just wanted a life where I didn't have to pretend. I wanted to be recognized for what I did, not for how well I played the obedient role." I stood up. "But you didn't want me. You wanted a daughter who bowed her head. And when I didn't do that, you erased me from everything." "I didn't," she started, but the sentence caught in her throat. "Don't say you didn't," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You faked a DNA test to strike me from the will. You let Amanda use my name for fraudulent grants. You stood by while she stole my research and only acted when your reputation was on the line." She stayed silent. The apartment suddenly felt impossibly wide in the middle of that silence. "Do you want me to apologize?" she asked at last, breaking the stillness. I shook my head. "No, because I don't need it anymore." I opened the door. "You should go. You've got investigations to deal with. And me? I have a real life to live." Eleanor Walker stood there for a moment. Her face no longer held that flawless pride it once did. She left without another word, her heels tapping lightly against the wood floor like the soft crack of a statue beginning to split. I closed the door, didn't lock it right away. I just stood there, leaning back against the wood, exhaling deeply like letting go of a lifetime waiting for a confession, and finally realizing I didn't need one anymore. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. "This is Marianne Hart. I used to be a nurse at Harbor Wellness. I don't know if you remember me." I froze. "Yes," I answered, heart pounding. "I was on shift that day. The one where Amanda gave the wrong dosage to that little boy. I saw her change the chart afterward. I wanted to speak up, but I got reassigned the following week. I don't have hard proof, but if you need a statement, I'm willing." I was speechless. "Thank you," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "You have no idea what that means to me." "I do, because I was once someone they treated like I didn't exist too." The call ended, but I remained still, feeling my heartbeat slowly return to normal. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel the need to teach them a lesson. What needed to be said, I'd said. What needed to be revealed, I'd revealed. Now, I just wanted to let go. Not out of forgiveness, but because I no longer needed them to define who I was. The next morning, I woke up early. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a soft golden hue across the floor. I made coffee, played some light jazz, and stepped onto my balcony, where small lavender pots were blooming, reaching upward from the care of my own hands. 1 month after Eleanor left my apartment, and the last time I ever saw her, everything grew strangely quiet. No one knocked on my door, no more threatening messages, no apology from Amanda, no letter from a family lawyer. No one tried to clarify or explain or control the damage. And oddly enough, that was exactly what I needed. There was no more anger left to hold, no more imaginary arguments in my head, no more dreams that jolted me awake at night with the weight of betrayal. I didn't need remorse. I didn't need anyone to bow and admit they were wrong, because I had moved on. One Saturday afternoon, while reorganizing my bookshelf, I found an old USB drive where I had saved every document, every piece of evidence, every truth that had once been buried. I opened it, checked each file, not because I needed anything from it anymore, but because I needed to know. I hadn't imagined it. I decided to do something I had never done before, share my story. I recorded a short video, right there in my small kitchen with natural light and no fancy edits. I didn't read from a script, I just spoke. My name is Susan Walker, and if you're hearing this, maybe you've also been through what I went through. Being ignored, pushed out, made invisible by your own family. I looked into the camera, calm in a way I never expected to be. I used to believe that if I stayed quiet enough, they'd forgive me. If I was good enough, they'd come back for me. But the truth is, some people don't want you to rise. They just want you silent, so they can keep shining. I paused, took a breath. It took me years to learn this. You don't owe anyone your silence. You have the right to speak. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to build a new life, even if you never get an apology. I smiled. A real smile, not forced. They may never own up to their wrongs, they may never return, but that doesn't define who you are. Only you get to decide that. I ended the video with a simple line. Live bigger than the limits they tried to put on you. I uploaded it to a small online forum where people shared stories about broken families. I didn't expect much, but within a week, There were hundreds of shares and thousands of comments. I'm the older sister in a family where my brother was always the center. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I thought I was the only one who's ever been called a burden by my own mother. You gave me the courage to stop seeking acceptance from a place it never existed. Each comment was a reminder I wasn't alone, and I never had been the problem. I was just the one brave enough to step off the stage everyone else was scared to leave. I still live my simple life. My little apartment, my work at the community counseling center, and quiet weekends teaching restorative yoga for trauma survivors. I don't need a spotlight. I have the truth. One day, after yoga class, an older woman came up to me. She gently took my hand, eyes glassy but smiling. My daughter sent me your video. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 8 years, but after watching it, I called her. Thank you. I placed my hand over hers and said, "It's never too late to listen." I don't know if Eleanor ever watched the video, or if Amanda ever read any of the articles written about her, but it doesn't matter anymore. Because the life I'm living now is no longer tied to their gaze. It isn't ruled by someone else's approval. I was once forgotten, pushed aside, twisted into someone I wasn't. But now I'm free, and no one can take that away from me. So if you're hearing me and you've been hurt, I want you to remember this. You don't need forgiveness to find peace. You just need to give yourself permission to begin again. And this time, start with the truth. From my own story, I've learned that sometimes the bravest thing isn't forgiving or forgetting. It's stepping out of the silence and reclaiming your voice. I used to live for others, used to be hurt by things I never did. But now I live for myself, no longer seeking acceptance, no longer needing apologies. Freedom doesn't come from waiting for others to change. It comes the moment you let them go to hold on to yourself. What do you think about Susan's journey? Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional and honest stories about family, healing, and finding your voice. I am Aurora Campbell, 32 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. In my family's eyes, I've never been the special one. Not like my sister. Melanie, the one they always called the pride of the Campbell family. Beautiful, graceful, married to a wealthy man, and mother of 2 adorable kids. Every time we had a family gathering, my mom would proudly tell the neighbors, "Melanie was just invited as an honored guest at a charity event. Everyone loves her." And me? I was the one slicing fruit, clearing the table, quietly listening to stories about Melanie's achievements, telling myself, it's okay, as long as the family's happy. No matter how hard I tried, I was always just the shadow behind her spotlight. I wasn't remarkable, but I was steady. I'd been self-sufficient since I was 21, never asked anyone for a dime. I worked hard in logistics, never missed a bill, never borrowed money. Even when my parents needed someone to cover the electric bill they forgot to pay, or front some cash for storm damage on the roof, I was there, without complaint. And every time, I'd get the same brief message from my mom. "Thank you, honey. It's a blessing that you don't have the burdens Melanie has." I used to swallow the words I wanted to say. What did no burdens mean exactly? That because I didn't have a family of my own, I was obligated to carry someone else's? But I stayed silent, thinking, I'm the daughter. I should be generous. The first time I truly felt upset was when my mom called in the middle of an important meeting. "Aurora, I just got off the phone with Melanie. She's so stressed. Ellie's preschool tuition just went up by more than $800. Can you help your sister out a little?" I still remember her tone. Half a request, half a command. I apologized to my boss for an urgent call, hung up, and transferred the money on autopilot. 3 days later, I received an invitation to my niece's birthday party. It was being held at a fancy resort. Tucked inside was a photo of Melanie and her husband lounging on a yacht, both of them glowing. The caption below read, "Family is everything." I smiled, a bitter smile. Family is everything? I was part of the family too. But somehow, I was just the interest-free bank. Another time, my dad sat at the kitchen table with his coffee and said, "You live alone, no husband, no kids. What's the money for? Sharing with family is just natural." I tightened my grip on the spoon, staring at the old wooden table. Has anyone ever asked me if I was okay? If I had dreams? Never. I only came to mine when there was a crisis or a bill that needed to be handled temporarily. One Christmas dinner, my sister casually stated, "Aurora's the most independent in the family. She doesn't have kids, so she's got it easy. Unlike us." I swallowed my bite of turkey. I didn't respond, but inside, small stones were piling up, heavy, ready to break through. I started working at 22, right after graduating from Tennessee State. Unlike Melanie, who had help from our parents to buy a car and got 3 years of rent paid up front, I moved into a tiny studio in East Nashville. Thin walls, creaky wood floors, and an air conditioner that roared like a tractor. But I felt proud. It was my space, paid for with my first real paycheck. That sense of ownership didn't last long. Just a few months later, while standing in line at the grocery store, my mom called. "Aurora, our AC broke. Your dad's sinuses are acting up. Can you send us $200 in advance? We'll pay you back by the end of the month." Before I could answer, she added, "Melanie's busy planning the kid's birthday. You know how expensive it gets with little ones." I sighed, put some items back from my cart, and transferred the money that night. Then Melanie's car broke down. Then summer school tuition for Ellie. Then repairs after a windstorm. One by one, every need fell on me. Automatically. No one asked if I was okay. As long as I didn't have kids, as long as I was unattached, they assumed I'd handle it. It's not that I didn't feel tired, I just didn't know how to speak up. My dad once patted my back, smiling warmly. "You're strong and capable. Not like your sister. Melanie's more fragile, you know, with 2 kids and all. But you're lucky. You're free." I looked down at my coffee. "Free?" he said. Did that mean being the lifeboat when the whole family was sinking? Being forgotten at every celebration, but remembered when the money ran low? One October evening, after a long workday, I walked in and saw my phone blinking. A text from Mom. "Honey, Melanie lost her dental coverage again, and Ellie needs urgent dental work. Your sister's so stressed, can you front a bit? I'll send it back later." At that moment, I was holding the confirmation email for a trip to New York, my first vacation in 3 years. I had planned it since spring, saved by working overtime, skipping brunches with coworkers. And I hit cancel. I never told anyone about that trip. Like every other time, I chose to sacrifice. Quietly. Melanie never knew what I gave up for her. She didn't know, and honestly, she didn't need to. To her, it was all expected. One night before Christmas, as I poured wine for my mom, Melanie said lightly, "Aurora always has money on hand. She's single, doesn't have to worry like we do. Sometimes I wish I had it that easy." I tightened my grip on the glass. I don't remember the food that night, but I remember the laughter. Mom, Dad. No one questioned that remark. In their minds, I was the one who had it easy. Another time, I was making tea, hands still damp from doing dishes, when the phone rang. "Aurora, Melanie's basement has mold. The cleanup's over 3,000. I know you don't have much extra, but if you could help out," I asked again, not with irritation, but with a calm curiosity. "Does Melanie know you're calling me?" Mom stayed quiet for a few seconds. "She's shy. She didn't want to bother you." I nodded, hung up, then sat down on the kitchen floor. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. There was just a quiet emptiness that washed over me, like a cold towel wrung dry. I wasn't born to be someone's walking wallet, but they made me believe it was my duty. Every no I swallowed, every plan I delayed, every dream I folded away. All of it was traded for one thing: the false comfort of a family that didn't care to see me. I never asked to be praised, but I didn't want to be the person they only remembered when something needed fixing. I wasn't a backup option. And they forgot one important truth. The quiet ones. When they leave, don't announce it. I once had a small dream. Just to sit by the window of a cafe in Paris, holding a cup of hot espresso, watching the crowds move along the Boulevard Saint-Germain. Nothing fancy. No one needed to come with me. I just wanted to be there, present, in my own life. I started saving when I was 26. Every month, I set aside a fixed amount. Even when work was uncertain, even when gas prices rose, even when I had to delay buying other things, the travel fund remained untouched. I called it my real-life fund because it was the only thing that made me feel like I was living for myself. By the end of the first year, I had saved nearly $3,000. I planned to fly to Paris the following spring when cherry blossoms bloom in the Champ de Mars. But in January, Mom called. Aurora? Melanie just lost her job. Her temp contract was cut. She and her husband are panicking. They're behind on the car loan. I froze. They didn't give an exact amount, just danced around it. Just a small contribution would help so much. In the end, I transferred $3,500, nearly all my savings. Paris was folded up and stored in a folder on my computer labeled maybe next year. The next year, I started over. I swapped Paris for Florence since tickets were cheaper and I had just watched a film set there. That summer, I almost hit my goal. But then Dad fell from the roof while trying to fix a gutter. The hospital bill came to nearly $8,000. Insurance only covered half. Melanie called. Can you help out with Mom and Dad a bit? We're stretched thin. Ellie's starting first grade and Noah's having serious allergy issues. I knew exactly what they expected. And I still remember the feeling when I hit transfer, like I was packing Florence into a box without a name. That box lived inside me, growing heavier with time. I had planned for Barcelona, then Kyoto, then Santorini. I once taped a map to my wall and marked every place I dreamed of visiting. But every time I got close to boarding a flight, something happened at home. I never got close enough to touch the dream. One early autumn night, while cleaning out my closet, my hand brushed against an old suitcase covered in dust. Still stuck to the handle was a note that read, Rome, April. I stared at it, and it felt like I was looking at a version of myself that still knew how to dream, how to live, how to step outside the boundaries of obligation. I sat down on the floor, opened my laptop, and pulled up the Maybe Next Year folder. Over 40 PDFs of unsent itineraries, flight confirmations never used, hotel reservations left untouched. Each one stamped with a different year, a different season, a different time I didn't choose myself. Had anyone ever asked what I wanted? Had anyone ever said, Aurora, save that money. Don't worry about us for once? Because to them, I was the one who could always put her dreams on hold. One Monday morning, I saw a photo Melanie had just posted. Her whole family stood smiling under a sign that read, Welcome to Cabo San Lucas. Golden sunlight. White dresses fluttering. Perfect smiles. Her caption read, Family is everything. Work hard to live a life worthy of the people you love. I stared at that photo. The same trip she had said was impossible right now due to finances. And just 3 weeks earlier, I had sent her $1,200 to help pay for Noah's medical bills. It wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I just saw everything more clearly than ever before. I closed my laptop, opened the closet, and pulled down the dusty suitcase. I took out my debit card, opened my browser, and booked a ticket. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't send a travel itinerary. Didn't leave a note. That Friday morning, I arrived at Nashville International Airport nearly 3 hours early. I had just one carry-on suitcase and a small backpack, but it felt like I was carrying a whole chapter of my life folded shut. The flight to Rome was set to depart at 9:15 a.m. I chose a window seat, economy, nothing fancy. But to me, it marked something sacred. After more than a decade, I was finally leaving the United States, not for work, not out of duty, but for myself. As I stood in line at the security checkpoint, scrolling through my phone to avoid eye contact, a familiar voice rang out behind me. "Ellie, hand Noah his juice box. You're spilling it." I froze. My heart clenched. I turned my head. There, just a few feet away, in the priority boarding line, was Melanie, with her 2 kids. And our mother, all wearing matching hoodies with the words La Famiglia Summer Trip across the chest. Laughing, chatting. Mom pulled a suitcase with a giant straw hat hanging from it that read, "Ciao Bella." I couldn't believe it. I stepped back, hiding behind a signpost. My throat tightened. They were boarding a flight to Italy. Same day, same time. Right then, I heard Mom say, "It's just too bad Aurora couldn't come, but she probably wouldn't enjoy crowded places anyway." Melanie laughed. "Don't worry. Honestly, I don't think she fits in with the whole Italy vibe anyway. She's probably at home reading like always." Both of them laughed, softly, naturally, without a trace of hesitation. I stood there, in the middle of the wide airport terminal, surrounded by strangers rushing past with rolling suitcases, and yet I felt completely empty. Not because they didn't invite me, but because I suddenly realized they never even considered it. I didn't exist in their plans. The trip I had spent years saving for turned out to be their private vacation, likely funded, at least in part, by all those emergency helps I had given. I turned away and quickly headed toward the women's restroom, trying to escape every glance. Locked in a small stall, I sat down on the toilet lid, cradling my head in both hands. No tears, just the quiet collapse of a trust that had eroded down to nothing. I opened my banking app and stared at the balance. I remembered every transfer, every canceled plan, every dream pushed to next year. And I finally understood. There would never be a next year. Not if I kept being the foundation for people who never saw me as part of the picture. I didn't call them. I didn't walk over to say hello. I didn't wait to see how they'd react if they spotted me. I returned to the line. When the boarding group was called, I stepped forward calmly, without glancing left or right. On that flight, I sat quietly, staring out the window as the wind slid over the wing. The sun rose above the clouds. It was heartbreakingly beautiful. But inside, I had only one thought. I had seen enough. And I would never forget. I arrived in Rome late in the afternoon. The evening light spilled over the terracotta rooftops, glowing like honey on centuries-worn cobblestones. I wheeled my suitcase through a small piazza near the hotel, the sound of the wheels on stone like a greeting from a completely different world. No one knew I was here, no message asking if I had landed, no call to check if I needed anything, and strangely, I felt more peaceful than I had in years. The next morning, I sat at a tiny cafe tucked between 2 old buildings. My cappuccino rested on a curled iron table, the foam as soft as clouds. I didn't take pictures, didn't post a story. I just sat there, watching Italians pass by, moving as if time wasn't chasing them. For once, I didn't have to plan my day around money transfers. I didn't sit in front of a spreadsheet, and I didn't dread a text from Mom or Melanie. I thought, maybe I should be happy. But then that comment came back, light, casual, sharp like a blade. She doesn't fit in with Italy. I closed my eyes, not out of anger, but because it stung. In my sister's eyes, Italy wasn't meant for someone like me. Quiet, simple, unremarkable. And worse, in my mother's eyes, that idea was valid. She nodded and smiled. No one disagreed. No one mentioned that I too might belong in a place like this. I started to realize, all these years I had only been useful. When someone needed help with tuition, I appeared. When the plumbing broke, they called me. But when it came to joy, to memories, to real living, I was left out, as if I didn't qualify for emotional experience. At Piazza Navona, surrounded by towering Baroque sculptures, I stood still and watched water spray from a stone fish's mouth. Children laughed and ran circles around the fountain. A violin played softly in the corner. One afternoon, wandering through Trastevere, I stumbled into an old bookshop. The scent of aged paper and oak filled the air. I sat down, picked up a worn English novel, and read under the warm, dim glow of a yellow bulb. A single line stopped me cold. Some people will never see you as a priority, because to them, you were only ever a solution. I closed the book. That was it. I was a solution, the one they could rely on, the one who was free, unburdened. The shadow that stayed behind while they assumed I would never have a light of my own. That night, I had a simple dinner at a tiny trattoria. At the next table, an elderly Dutch couple toasted and smiled like newlyweds. I ate alone, but I wasn't sad. I felt lighter, as if a stone had finally rolled off my chest. I didn't need them to understand. I didn't need an apology. All I needed was clarity. And if this journey was meant to be a solo one, then so be it. Because I would rather walk alone than keep living like a ghost in my own family. I returned to Nashville on a quiet Monday morning. The plane touched down at 6:12 a.m., the sky covered in a soft, silver gray, like the whole city was still half asleep. I didn't tell anyone I was back. I didn't text Mom. I didn't call Melanie. No one picked me up. No conversation waited for me on the other end. Just me and the suitcase that had followed me through the stone streets of Rome. The taxi dropped me off in front of my apartment. I paid, rolled my bag inside, turned on the lights, and stood in the quiet, chilly room. No ringing phone. No "are you home yet" text. No invitation for dinner. And honestly, I didn't feel sad. I brewed a cup of coffee, opened the curtains, and sat down in my usual wooden chair by the window. Outside, the street began to stir. Inside, I let the silence settle, without rushing to fill it with busyness, check-ins, or last-minute transfers. The silence lasted exactly 3 days. On Thursday evening, my phone rang. It was Mom. I didn't answer. A message came through right after. "Sweet Aurora, I heard you took a trip. I hope you had a relaxing time. Call me when you can." I read it and didn't reply. A day later, another message. "Your dad needs to replace his tires urgently, and he just had his hours cut. Can you help a little?" I leaned back into my chair and closed my eyes. Same tone. It always began with a little concern and ended with a financial request wrapped in family language. That was always their way. Gentle, calculated. I didn't respond right away. It wasn't until Sunday, when Mom called for the 3rd time, that I finally picked up. Her voice lit up with relief. "Aurora, you finally answered. I thought you were mad at me." I replied briefly. "I'm not mad, just enjoying some quiet." "So, you had a nice trip, right? I saw photos your friend posted on Facebook. The city looked beautiful." I paused for a few seconds, then answered, "Yeah, Rome was beautiful, even though someone once said I didn't belong there." There was a pause on the other end. Mom chuckled nervously. "You must have misunderstood. I just meant you live simply, so maybe you wouldn't enjoy such luxurious places." I cut her off, my voice calm but firm. "You don't need to explain, Mom. I heard it clearly." She went quiet. I continued. "And about the tires, I think it's best if you ask Melanie." Mom's voice dropped, slightly tense. "Melanie just paid for summer school tuition for the kids. You know what their situation is. I didn't want to bother you, but this time it's really urgent." I exhaled softly, not angry, not bitter, and said only one thing. "You didn't seem too worried when booking first-class tickets to Florence a few weeks ago." The silence on the other end stretched like a vacuum. "That was a promotion, and we booked it long ago. It's not the same as..." Not the same as me going on vacation, I said with a light laugh. Not the same as me having the right to spend the money I earn. Aurora, don't make it sound like your family doesn't appreciate you. Mom, I said slowly, if you ever called me once without mentioning money, maybe I'd believe that. She sighed, her voice weary. I don't want things to be like this, but you know your father and I are struggling. I know, I said, and I also know I've been treated as the solution for far too long. Now, I just want to be a normal person. I ended the call after that without waiting for her to say anything else. I was just about to make my morning coffee when the phone rang again. The name flashing on the screen was one I had avoided for weeks. Melanie. I hesitated for a second, then picked up. Her voice came through immediately, no small talk. So you're finally answering. How long were you planning to play this silent treatment game, Aurora? I leaned lightly against the kitchen counter, my tone calm. Good morning, Melanie. I'm doing well, thanks for asking. Don't deflect, she cut in. This has gone way too far. Are you seriously mad just because of that trip? You think it's just about the trip? Isn't it? She raised her voice. You disappeared, ignored everyone. Mom cried all week. And you? You just stayed silent, like the family did something horrible. I set my coffee down, took a deep breath, then said each word clearly. It's not like something happened. It did happen. Because I didn't invite you to Italy? Melanie let out a half laugh. Aurora, you're too old to be acting this childish. I looked ahead at the empty space in front of me. My voice didn't shake, but it was cold. You didn't invite me because you never even thought about me. Not once. I'm just the person you go to when something breaks. The walking wallet. The name you dial when you need money for Ellie's school. When Noah's car breaks down. When you need help fixing your water heater. But when it's something joyful... Your dream vacation? I'm nowhere in your equation. There was silence on the other end. But I didn't stop. Did you know I had already booked a ticket? Same time, same day. And I saw you. With Mom and the kids. In matching outfits, boarding first class, laughing together. Saying, I didn't belong in Italy. Aurora, were you eavesdropping? Her voice faltered. No need to eavesdrop, Melanie. I was standing there, in line like everyone else, and I realized I was never a part of the beautiful things in this family. I heard a sharp exhale from the other end. Maybe she hadn't expected me to know, hadn't expected me to be there, or to have heard every word. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said, her voice smaller. All these years, you've helped so much, everyone knows that. But that doesn't give you the right to lash out now. It's not because I helped a lot, I replied. It's because I was never truly loved. This family sees me as the reliable one when something goes wrong. But for birthdays, I'm not invited. For holidays, I'm the one who brings dessert and stays to wash dishes. And you're the star of the show. Are you jealous? I smiled. No, Melanie, I don't need to be the center of attention. I just want to be respected as a human being. Not a wallet, not someone standing backstage just to keep your spotlight shining. She went quiet for a long moment, then said in a dismissive tone, Then do whatever you want. Just don't come crawling back when it all falls apart. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Don't worry, I won't come back. I spent far too long living for people who never once chose me. Now I'm choosing to live for myself, and you? You'll have to figure things out on your own. She hung up first. The cold beep of disconnection echoed in my ear. Finally, I had said what I needed to say. Not to keep the peace, not to please anyone, but to make one thing clear. I was done staying silent, and I was no longer here to carry the weight for anyone else. 3 days after that call with Melanie, my voicemail started filling up. First came Mom. Aurora, you can't just cut us off like this. No matter what, we're still family. I don't want people saying you've turned your back on us. Then came Dad. who rarely called directly. "I heard what you said to your sister. You should call back and make things right." Then came the texts, still polite at first. "Just a little help to get us through the week. The bank sent a late notice. I'm really scared, Aurora. You can't just sit back while the family is on the edge like this." I read every message, but I didn't respond. Guilt passed over me like a thin cloud, and then burned away under the light of reason. I wasn't the same voiceless, self-sacrificing shadow I used to be. On the 7th day, I got an unexpected message from Lisa, Melanie's close friend from college, someone I still followed on social media. "Hey, Aurora. I'm not sure if I should say anything, but I heard things are kind of falling apart over there." I called her right away, standing in the middle of the grocery store. "Where'd you hear that?" I asked directly. "Some of my friends works at the bank," she said. "Your parents are in foreclosure. They've been 3 months late and now they're on the red list." She paused. "I also heard Melanie had to dip into her savings to try and cover it." Lisa continued, her voice lower. "Her husband, Matt, apparently had no idea. When he saw the savings account drained, he freaked out. I heard they're living apart for now." That night, I received a short message from Melanie. "Hope you're happy now." I didn't reply. The next day, my mom left a nearly 2-minute voicemail, her voice cracking as if she'd been crying. "Aurora, you can't imagine how stressed I've been. I haven't slept in days. Melanie's falling apart. She's having to carry too much. If you keep staying silent like this, everything's going to fall apart." She paused, then her voice softened. "I'm sorry if I was ever thoughtless, but you're the one who always understood. I need you, sweetheart." I listened to it all, but I didn't call back. My whole life, I was taught that the good one never lets the family fall apart. But no one ever asked how many times that good one had already fallen before she learned to stand on her own. Now, with me gone, everything was crashing. Not because I was cruel, but because the truth had been covered up for too long. A week later, I received an email from an address I never expected. Matt, Melanie's husband. Subject: "Not sure I have the right to say this." The body of the email was just a few lines. "I know I don't mean much to you, but I think you deserve to know. Everything you carried. I didn't see it until now. And I'm sorry I ever thought you were just the bitter sister. I hope you find the peace this family never gave you, the way you deserved." I sat in front of the screen for a long time, fingers on the keyboard, not sure if I should reply or stay silent. In the end, I just clicked save and closed the laptop, because maybe even a late acknowledgement is better than none at all. On Wednesday night, as I was drying my hands after dinner, my phone rang. This time it wasn't Mom or Melanie. It was Dad. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. "Hi, Dad." His voice was low and deliberate, but the tension was obvious. "Aurora, this has gone far enough." I didn't respond. He continued, "I don't understand what you're thinking, but your family, and this behavior, being silent, refusing, cutting everyone off, it's honestly disappointing." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. He wasn't finished. "Family is supposed to support each other, not turn away when things get hard. No matter what, you can't forget who you are. You're acting like a stranger. Do you have any idea how many nights your mother has cried?" I set the towel on the kitchen table and sat down in the wooden chair. "And do you know how many years I stayed silent?" I asked, my voice low but clear. There was a brief pause on the other end, then he replied, "You're insulting this family. Your mother and I raised you all these years, and now, just because of one trip, you act like we betrayed you." I let out a quiet laugh, not loud, but deep. "It's not just because of a trip, Dad. It's because you left me out long ago, the moment you all planned that flight to Italy without even thinking of me. No invitation, not even a question, just laughter behind my back." "You were eavesdropping?" His voice sharpened. No, I replied. I just happened to be standing in line right behind the family, and I heard every word. I closed my eyes. The memory was still vivid. My mom laughing. Melanie laughing louder. She wouldn't fit in there, and then they all walked on. As if I didn't exist. You misunderstood, he said, his voice now gentler. That's not how it was. Not how it was? I repeated. Then what was it, Dad? That I only exist when someone needs money? That I only get called when there's a crisis? You're being too sensitive. No. I'm thinking clearly now, I cut in. And I don't think setting boundaries is betrayal. It's growth. It's recognizing where I stand and choosing not to be the fallback plan anymore. I heard a long sigh through the phone. I didn't think you'd be this stubborn. I thought you were the reasonable one. I gave a dry laugh. That's exactly why you always chose me to carry the burden. Because I was reasonable. Because I was the one who understood. But understanding doesn't mean letting others take advantage of you forever without saying a word. There was no argument from the other end now. Just one final line. Exactly what I had expected. If you walk away now, don't expect this family to welcome you back. I stood up, looking out the window where the streetlights had just flickered on. I'm not walking away. I'm stopping at the right time. Aurora, he began. Dad, I said calmly and firmly, you weren't abandoned. You're just now, for the first time, standing on your own without me as your support. And if that makes you angry, maybe you should ask yourselves why everything depended on a daughter you never truly valued. I didn't wait for a reply. I hung up. After that call with Dad, my phone went silent. No more alerts in the middle of the night. No more texts starting with, Aurora, I know you're busy, but... No more missed calls from the landline I'd come to associate with sighs and tears. There was only me, and a strange, cleansing quiet. I woke up on a Monday morning without checking my bank account to make sure I could cover someone else's bill. I made coffee, put on some jazz, and spent the whole morning reading a book without interruption from a family emergency. I started living for myself. I signed up for a weekend painting class. Not because I wanted to be an artist, but because I used to love color in high school, and had shelved it for more practical things. I replaced my old sofa with an olive green one, the kind my mom once called impossible to decorate around. I bought a high-end espresso machine, and a pair of shoes that cost 3 times more than what I'd ever let myself spend before. No one raised an eyebrow. No one told me to save it for a future home or kids. I only needed to ask one person. Myself. The next month, I flew to Kyoto. Sitting in meditation at an ancient temple, I realized peace doesn't always come from going far. It comes from cutting the noise at the right time. There was no satisfaction when I heard Melanie had sold the 2-story house she once flaunted with pride. And when I learned my parents had relocated to a modest rental on the edge of town after losing their home to the bank, I didn't flinch. It wasn't joy, but it wasn't sorrow either. Just a quiet, steady absence of feeling. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was the natural outcome of years where only one person quietly held everything up, and when that person stepped away, the illusion cracked. A friend once asked me over coffee, "You don't feel even a little satisfied? They finally had to take responsibility." I just shook my head. No. Because I never wanted them to fall. I just didn't want to keep getting crushed. After my trip to Kyoto, I did one thing. I changed my phone number. Quietly, no announcement. I also locked all my social media accounts and created new ones, connected only with people who truly cared. To Mom, Dad, and Melanie, I left a blank space. Not out of rage, not to prove a point. Just to walk away. I know, if they really needed to, they'd find a way to reach me. But this time, the door won't open again. It wasn't because I was cruel. It was because I no longer wanted to be shoved back into the same old place where every bit of value I brought was tied to a dollar amount and my existence only mattered when someone needed saving. I used to believe I owed them because they gave me life, raised me, paid for school. But after everything, I realized I don't owe them my success. I don't owe them forgiveness. And I certainly don't owe them my life. One late afternoon, sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, golden sunlight resting on my shoulder, I opened a journal and wrote a simple line. Aurora, 32 years old, no longer chasing after people who don't need her, finally choosing herself, one day at a time. I set the pen down and closed my eyes. No more voices calling from behind. No more whispers of, your sister has it harder, be understanding. No more questions soaked in pity and pressure. Just me, in silence, permanent. Aurora's story is a powerful reminder. Love shouldn't only show up when help is needed. In real life, those labeled as the responsible ones are often taken for granted, as if it's just expected. But when they learn to set boundaries, their silence is no longer weakness. It's strength. Freedom doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from the moment we stop asking for permission to live authentically. And sometimes cutting ties isn't the end. It's the beginning of true peace. What do you think about Aurora's journey? Have you ever been in a similar situation? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family, choices, and personal growth.